Happy football season, everybody, and welcome into the Gramlich and Mack Lane podcast presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Gramlich and Mack Lane. And guys, our summer guest series is done. Our ACC kickoff recap is done. It is time to get into our season previews. Mac, I can't believe we're here. Like, I know it's still technically July because we have so many teams that we're starting now, but football is here, and there's no better time of the year, Mac.
It is the most wonderful time of year, KG.
It is.
Let's freaking go. I'm jacked up. We have 17 of these things, 17 head coaches, 17 teams. And guess what? We're going 5 days a week. We're sprinting into football season, sprinting into week 0, where we're going across the pond. And I love this. It's been so much fun to talk to all of these coaches, to get all these things fired up. And we're going to have some nuggets along the way. But really, we just wanted you guys to hear from these coaches, what they think about their teams. They know them better than anybody, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy every time we do these, KG.
Oh, yeah, and getting to talk to all these head coaches. The ACC has some great head coaches just to talk to. Like, think what you want about them football-wise or whatever if you with your team, but they're really good interviews, and so it's been a fun process. And I want to say shout out to our scheduling department, Eric McLean, for making this happen because – Max scheduling and texting all these people and staying on some people, you know who you are, for allowing us to get all these interviews done. You were awesome, Mac. You did great work. I know it's a lot of work.
Well, I appreciate that. But the unsung heroes are the SIDs. And hopefully we get a shout out everybody per episode. And when we're talking about your team, but could not do it without you guys. And I know a lot of it, it's not your fault. It's your coaches and you're doing all this. I get it. It's a lot. But we have a lot of great SIDs in this league too. Very helpful people that made all this happen. And some new friends. We got to interact and talk and meet some new people along this journey. So I will say this too, KG, before we jump into this episode and introduce our guest today. There was a lot of confidence throughout the league.
Yeah, I agree.
Talking to these coaches, you guys will see it the next 17 episodes here. People are feeling good, and we needed that obviously to translate. We'll talk about who in particular and where it's the most important. But I got some good vibes as we were doing these interviews.
Hashtag good vibes, Mac. Agreed. And also, just going back to the scheduling for a second, you should have seen Mac and I trying to coordinate with Pacific time and, Central time now. Like there's and we have to do that on very small scale.
You got to be specific.
Yeah, you got to be specific when you're dealing with Pacific. Okay. Let's get into our first team. Our first team today is North Carolina, and we talked with the always awesome to talk to Mack Brown. I could talk to Mack Brown forever. He's always so nice to us and so gracious with his time. We're going to get to Mac, and then this is kind of how we're going to structure it. We'll get to the coach first because that's who you guys really want to hear from, and then we will give some thoughts afterwards on the schedule because coaches don't really like to talk about schedules. I don't know.
All games are important. The next game's the most important.
Every game, Mac. UNC last year went 8-5, had that great start, struggled a bit towards the end. Mack Brown gets into that. 4-4 in the ACC. They started the year with that great win over South Carolina with all the sacks. Then they weirdly lost to Virginia, and the season was basically derailed a bit at that point. Their win total is 7.5 for the season.
Come on. It's going to be fun. It's a great conversation with Mac. We'll talk schedule on the other side. Here's a quick message from our friends over at Ingles, and then let's get to the interview.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department? Or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Coach Mack Brown, welcome back to the show, brother. It is great to see you. We were just talking a little bit, but summer's flying. We're getting through this thing, and I know there is light at the end of the tunnel because the trips with the grandbabies are coming soon. I know you're excited for that.
I really am. We go to Linville for July 4th and get to see a lot of friends, and the grandkids. They're from 8 to 13 now. There's 6 of them, 3 boys, 3 girls. And the cousins just love getting together in Linville. That's become their happy place. And when grandparents have a house, we say it's the happy, happy, happy house. No fighting, no griping. Whatever you want, you get. Shut up, parents. Nope. You don't have any control in this household. So when the young guys will say, "Dad, can I get this?" No. "Mom, can I get this?" No. "Nana, can I get this?" No. Your parents said no. "Pops," and I said, "Come on, let's go."
That's awesome.
That's perfect. That's your role. That's
That's
every
my role.
grandfather's
That's my
role.
job. And my granddad was the most wonderful thing in my life. So my
Yeah.
goal is to be my granddad for my kids.
That's awesome.
And likewise, my grandfather was the best. So
No
totally
question.
understand. Okay, let's talk about Drake Maye here for a second, because just because he's flown the nest, coach, and he's off to the big leagues doesn't mean that you don't keep up with him, I'm sure. And how is Drake doing? How exciting was it for you to see him get selected so high and accomplish that dream?
It's really exciting, Kelly, and we stay in touch. We don't want to bother him because he's so overloaded. He got so many things going on in his mind. He just signed a $36 million contract, so he's doing okay there. I don't have to give him a loan or anything. And I do remember back even before cell phones were really good, Vince Young signed a $20 million contract and called me collect to tell me how excited he was. And I said, "We're good. You don't have to call me collect anymore." But I'm so happy for him. And Drake made a decision to decommit from Alabama to come here, and it worked. It worked for him, and that's what you want. You don't want young guys to make decisions that aren't best for them in the long run. And he's going to live in this state when he gets through. He and Sam Howell both are icons in this state. They'll be held in high esteem for the rest of their lives, and I'm just very excited for both of them.
Yeah, it's so fun to see that, Coach. I mean, just the run that you've been on here with these QBs, it's been great to watch. It's been fun to watch, and I know it's super exciting for you guys in every aspect that comes with it. And speaking of those QBs, let's jump to your team a little bit here and look at this room. What did you see from each guy? I know you bring in Max Johnson. I know you had Harold there, and we saw flashes from him, brilliance from him throughout the season when he did get his time. What did you see from those two guys in the spring, and was either guy able to separate it all?
Well, they really haven't separated, but they're both really good. So that's a good thing. And Max has thrown over 900 balls in the SEC. He's played in really tough environments. He's been hit. So he's got just loads of experience. And of course, he's got the great gene pool with his dad,
that's right,
Brad, winning a Super Bowl and being so good at Florida State in basketball and football. So we're really excited about Max. He runs better than you think. He's about 6'5", 230, 235. He's tough. He's smart. On the other end of that spectrum, Connor is different in that he runs 4.4. He can fly. He can't just run. He's got a great arm, but they're different. So Chip Lindsey and the Clyde Christensens and Freddie Kitchens, Lonnie Galloway, all these guys are trying to figure out, and this is what coaches do. What does Max do best? What does Connor do best? And when they're in there, let's don't do what we do. We've got to do what they do. And I like it, guys, when you go through the summer and you really don't know who the guy is, because then both have to compete, and they have to compete at a high level. They have to show leadership. And then I like talking to the older players at the end of summer, because we don't get to watch them throw and say, "What do you think?"
Yeah.
Jevin Sneed was leading coming out of spring practice when we were at Texas, and Colt McCoy won the job in the summer.
Yeah.
I think Jacoby Criswell, who's coming back to us, had the lead coming out of spring practice. You guys were at the spring game.
Yeah,
and
you told us that. Yeah.
And then Jacoby pulled a hamstring, and Drake separated, and here he is, first-round draft choice. So it'll be a really good summer for those two, and now we're bringing Jacoby back. So it'll be really interesting to see, after his years of experience, how do we incorporate him into the mix? Does he have a chance to compete at a high level since he missed all the spring?
Right.
So we've got a really good quarterback room, but we got to have somebody step up.
Yeah, and Coach, so how do you manage that? I mean, without giving all the trade secrets away, I mean, does one guy one day, he's the one, he's going with all the one reps, or do you do it in practice? Say, hey, for 7-on-7, you're the one. For inside, you're the one. How do you try to manage that to get those live reps where you can, really evaluate the difference?
Yeah, Eric, it's a great question. And this spring, we had our starting 2 tight ends out and our top 3 receivers out. So they didn't get to go through spring. So we had some really young guys with that second team. So what we decided is we would give Max and Connor equal reps. One would go with the first team, which we call our blue team. The other would go with the second team, which we call our white team, and then they'd flip. And they had exactly the same number of snaps with both teams. And now we got to figure out how to get Jacoby in that mix too. But it was an interesting conversation because all of us sat there and said, if the second team guys are struggling some, is it okay to have your, quote, starting quarterback working with the second team, or will he get discouraged if they miss a block? And all of us said, you know what? Quarterbacks are going to have some adversity.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a great example for us. If we've got a freshman left tackle trying to block a really good defensive end, he's going to miss him some. That's going to happen some in games. So we went through the spring and both guys, it's funny when I've had the quarterback battles before, you want somebody to separate. Yeah. And then one day one will do it and you'll say, I think he got it now. And the next day, the next guy will step up and just do the same. But it's good. It's a whole lot better to have three guys with experience that can play than only have one. So I'm excited. We've done this before. We've managed more than one quarterback before, and we'll figure that out. But I think it's a good situation to have, and it's competition. It's not a conflict because they're all three are wonderful young people, and they really pull for each other. They got strong faith. We had a quarterback camp yesterday, and I had Connor and Max speak, and both of them were talking about how good the other one was.
That's awesome.
How good are these kids? They just want to win.
Yeah, and that's what you need in this day and age, Coach. When quarterbacks leave, like it's hard to have three guys that you feel pretty good about in one room, which sounds like that's what you have. And we're looking at your roster, Mac and I were, and we're saying, "Gosh, this guy's back. This guy's back." I mean, it feels like you were able to roster retention. You know, that's the big word these days. You were able to do that specifically at the wide receiver position. I know you said you had some injuries in the spring, but J.J. Jones and Pacer and McCollum, you got these guys back. So what do you expect from this wide receiver room?
Kelly, I think it's loaded. And the good thing is since those guys, Gavin Blackwell didn't get to practice this spring, since some of those guys were out, it forced the young ones that we had last year and the freshmen to step up and play. So the Cullivers and the Christian Hamiltons and then the Vari Greens, the Jordan Ships and the Alex Taylors, and I'll miss somebody because I don't have them sitting here in front of me. But all those guys are good players. So Lonnie Galloway's got a room of about 13 really good players, and what we've got to do is find the best six, and we've got to make sure that those six play. And we've looked really hard at why did we start 9-1 and didn't finish well, and why did we start 6-0 and didn't finish well? Some of it's schedule's really tough at the end. I got that, but the other part is we feel like we've got to play more people. So we're going to play too deep, and we're going to play too deep across the board. And our linebackers have played too many snaps. We haven't had a third or fourth linebacker play. We're going to play them. And that's one of the things that our coaches have talked about. So we're going to play 6 wide receivers, and they're going to be rotating during the game, and we're going to keep them fresh. And we're going to be more fresh going into that 8, 9, 10, 11 game than we've been the last few years.
Yeah, which I think is exceptional and should get a lot of guys excited knowing that, hey, this rep matters in practice because it's only going to prove that I can get into that top 6. It's not just the top 3 that seems unachievable.
And Eric and Kelly, the other thing is the transfer portal now, if you don't play them, they're out.
Right, exactly.
They're gone. I was just thinking the other day with my wife, with Sally, I'm glad we don't have a transfer portal in marriage. She'd be gone 3 days a week.
I know that's not true. Not true.
But you got to play them if you want to keep them.
Yeah.
Because they've got other options now. And somebody else, a coach said something the other day that I really respect, and it really got my attention too. He said, we've got the best locker rooms we've ever had. And I said, why? And he said, because if they don't want to be here, they're gone.
It's very true. It
is true. Yeah. So he said every player on your team for the first time decided to stay instead of leave. So he should be happy with what's going on in his life, or he wouldn't be there.
Right. What a great point, man. Interesting way to look at it. Interesting way to look at it for sure.
Everybody's talking about what's NIL doing to the locker room. Well, between NIL and transfer portal, it's really cleaning it up.
It's worked itself out.
And it's worked itself out.
It's funny how that does that. Coach, I was thinking the other day as I was preparing for this episode here, and I couldn't help but think about the time you and I were sitting at practice 2 years ago. The tight ends run out, and then this, I was going to say not little, 28 runs out, and I'm thinking it's a three-back. I'm like, that is a big dude. Who is that? And you say, oh, that's one of our young little freshmen. He'll be this and that. Well, Omarion Hampton is now the best running back in the country and has a chance to solidify that. And I'm going through his stats, and I'm looking at this, and this dude is a freak. I mean, he is so good, obviously on paper, but then when you watch the tape, I mean, there's nothing that he can't do. How, I guess, now that he's a junior, he's an upperclassman, how does that role change? Because we know what we're going to get on the field, but how does that change for him going into being an upper level guy?
Yeah, Eric Kelly said it a few minutes ago. We've got some good players. We're under the radar, but we're not. We're going to show up every week with a chance. And when you've got a guy like Omarion, he becomes the face of your offense instead of Drake last year. When you run the ball better, you're going to help your defense better. You're going to stay on the field more. So we feel like all of that may help us down the road. Omarion, usually if it's a long conversation with him, you'll say, Omarion, how are you? And he'll say, fine. How's your day, Omarion? Good. So he is a no-nonsense, go to work, very positive, very upbeat, high energy, just wants to win kid. It's unbelievable. His body's amazing. He runs 4.4. He's 220. He can catch. He can block. My problem last year is every time he was out of the game, I was telling Coach Porter, "What's wrong?" Man, every time he touches it, he can score. And he says, "You're going to kill him. You've got to let him have a break every now and then." So we've got to make sure we find that guy to help him with snaps when he's not in there. But I said the other day on a interview that he was one of the best I've ever coached. And when you talk about Ricky Williams, Jamal Charles, there's been some Natron Means here. There's been some great players. He potentially is in that group. You can't say he's better than Ricky Williams, who won the Heisman, but he is in that group of being the group of the best I've ever coached.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. And KG, just to remind people before we get to this talented tight end group that I think is the best in the country too, 253 carries, 1,500 yards. And it's not just like you're giving him the ball and he's not doing anything. He's averaging over 6 yards a carry, 15 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, he caught it 30 times for over 200 yards. I mean, he is unbelievable.
That's why you give it to him.
Yeah.
As much as you can.
If he wasn't making yards, you wouldn't give it to him. And the other thing, in this world, we're having to recruit a lot smaller group than before because we've got to recruit a group that wants to be here.
Yeah.
We've got to recruit a group that wants to stay here academically, because if they're going to take money up front, then they're going to take money after their second year or first year when they're really good, and they're going to leave you anyway. So we've totally changed who we are to who's going to not only come here and not have their hand out, but also who's going to stay here.
Yeah.
And Omarion could have gone anywhere this year and made a lot of money. And he said, "No, I'm staying." I said, "Why?" I like the place. I trust you all. You're helping me get where I want to go. We got a chance to be good. So why would I leave for a few bucks? And I think that's the mentality you got to have now. You got to have that type guy on your team to be able to continue to get better.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And, he's playing for a guy that's, as you just mentioned, Coach, has coached some pretty good running backs. So there's a pedigree there. The main theme of this interview, Coach, I think, is when we talk about certain position groups, they're loaded. That's just kind of the theme. This tight end room, you already loaded. Then you bring in Jake Johnson as well. Like, what can you do with these guys from a mismatch standpoint? How excited are you about this group?
Well, you've got to give again, like Lonnie Galloway recruiting these receivers, you got to give Freddie Kitchens so much credit because he gets it. All the kids want to play for him because he's been a head coach in the NFL. He's been an offensive coordinator for 11 years in the NFL. He's coached 2 number 1 draft choice at tight end. He coached Jason Witten. He's coached 2 quarterbacks that were number 1 draft choices, 2 running backs that were number 1 draft choices. So when Freddie walks in your school, everybody says, "Whoa, this guy's been to a bunch of drafts. He knows how to get me ready to get there. And then you take guys like John Copenhaver and Bryson Nesbitt that just keep getting better and better and better. And then we've got really great young tight ends. I mean, those guys he's signing they just keep getting better. And this year's group's going to be the same. And then you have a transfer like Jake come in, who was one of the best in the country coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the Clyde Christensens and the Freddie Kitchens and the Chip Lindsays. And Lonnie, you've got these guys now that have been doing this a long time. So it gives us a chance to get a guy like Bryson Nesbitt, who was some had him as a 5-star basketball player. So he's a mismatch on speed with linebackers and safeties. He's a mismatch on height. And he, like Omarion, is a guy we've got to go to. Mm-hmm. And then John Copenhaver's on 4 special teams on top of being a great blocker and catcher at tight end. He actually played a game last year with a broken hand and caught a pass. Jeez. He caught it with the other arm. And that's how tough he is.
Gosh, I love to see that. Can we expect to see some 3 tight end sets? I mean, just power slamming down your face when you have those type of guys?
Yeah, we will. And the best thing right now that you can do with those guys is they can play tight or they can flex.
Right.
And with modern day tempo and trying to keep the defense where they can't substitute and they got to keep those big guys on the field.
Right.
That just gives you so much more diversity with the formations you can run with those guys. So it really helps keep the defense on the field and get them tired.
Yeah, I mean, they're chess pieces is what they are and what they can bring to a game. And for an offensive coordinator, I can't wait to see it. We've already seen, snapshots of the 2, but now you add that 3rd. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've talked about the transfer portal a lot. You add an absolute monster in Howard Sampson, 6'8", 330. Can you do me a favor? Can you take a picture of Howard and Willie on the field together and send that out? I mean, everybody needs to see that because I think it would be so funny. But how has that unit come together? And I joke about Willie. He's one of the best. I love the way he plays, and I think he really uses his leverage. But looking at that offensive line, what can we expect from them this year?
Well, I'm not sure we can get Willie and Howard in the same picture.
That's right.
You're talking about 5'11".
That's a big gap.
6'8". Yeah.
I heard he was 6 foot. He's 5'11". Okay, that's good to know.
No, I don't. I think we'd have to stretch Willie to get him to 6 foot.
That's right.
He was 47-0 as a state champion wrestler in Florida.
Yeah.
If you're in an alley, you want Willie with you now.
1,000%.
I keep Willie from whipping officials during the game because one of them calls him holding. He says, "Coach," I said, "Just settle down, Willie. We're good."
He's a great player. He's a great player.
When you start talking about dogs, Willie's a dog. Now the players just love him. And he's just so tough, and he loves to play so much. And in fact, when he came here to visit from Coastal Carolina, our coaches said, "You've watched the video. Don't look at how short he is when he walks in, because you're not going to want him." But he will bite you for sure. I think, and this is a little bit of a load, I think this will be the best offensive line we've had in our 6 years.
That's great.
They're tough. Great. We've got the right tackle, Trey Green, hasn't played. He was a redshirt freshman last year, but he's 6'8", probably 360. We get the transfer from Georgia Tech, Ja'Kai Leftwich, that's 6'6", 335. You've got Howard at 6'8", they say 25. I think he passed that a long time ago. Probably 335, and he'll be a draft choice. And then you get Austin Blaskey, who was a 6th player at Georgia, who's really a good player, who'll be at center and guard. We actually have a transfer in Jeff Greenberg that came in from a Division III school, and he's 6'3", 290, 310, something like 300. He's right in that 300 group, and he's tough and can play center or guard. We got a couple of freshmen that Randy Clement signed, and one of the things we have been inconsistent here with, guys, is our offensive line coaches. We've had 3 in 5 years, and that's not good. That's too many. And Stacy Searles went to Georgia, and Jack Bicknell went to Wisconsin. Randy Clements is going into his 2nd year, and he's done an amazing job of teaching and getting these pieces and getting tougher. And so you add the tougher offensive line, and you add Omarion mentality to that toughness of the offensive line, we have a chance to run the ball more consistent or more like we did when Javonte Williams and Michael Carter were here. And at that time, we were running the ball pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Coach, I would keep an eye out for Coach Davis in your practices once you're describing this O-line. Like, he might try to come poach something. I would just be aware, okay? 6'8". I know the weight maybe doesn't translate to the basketball court, but
you got to worry about Bryson, apparently, 5-star basketball player.
Yeah,
Come on.
Bryson could be one of those that could run over and play, so he could do that.
Coach, okay, we got to talk some defense. You know, Mac and I, sometimes we get off track, but you bring in Geoff Collins, who we always loved talking with when he was the head coach at Georgia Tech, the minister of mayhem, as he had gone by in the past. What was it about Coach Collins that made you want to bring him in and run this defense?
You know, Kelly, when I first met Geoff, I was doing TV games when he was at Temple. So I watched him do an amazing job up there. And Temple's a tough spot. And he did it. And they fought hard and they had good players. And then I seen him go to Georgia Tech, and it's a little weird that they're lifting weights for the game and he's got his cup from Waffle House and all the stuff that he's doing. And what I realized is that was his way to try to bring attention to their program.
Yeah.
It's not goofy stuff. They were a program that was struggling to be known, and especially with Georgia. So what I found with Geoff is he's very smart. He's got so much energy. He's all inclusive. He's got every defensive coach in this building and defensive player in this building believing that we're going to be good. It's been amazing to watch him. And when being a head coach, too, I think that's where some of the inclusion comes in, because a wide receiver will catch a ball. He'll sprint across the field and chest bump the wide receiver and say, "That's what I mean, man. That makes us better. We're going to have to play against guys like you." And the kids just love it. So his fun, his energy is really contagious. And I'm really excited. And he's exactly what I've been preaching. He looks complicated, but he's simple. But he's going to be aggressive and he's going to come after you, and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
Mentality. That mentality is fun.
And he knows you got to get people on their heels on first down.
Right.
You can't play.
Yeah, and what we read in the spring is that, man, he's great at disguising it and showing different things and wanting you to slide a particular way or doing that to totally, come the other way. And that's why the Minister of Mayhem kind of title is there. We're jacked up about it and can't wait to see, again, how he uses all this talent that you guys have on the defense. And, I think it starts with obviously Cayman Rucker, who, again, one of the best edge guys in the country, a guy that decided to come back, probably had a really nice draft grade. But wanted to come back to Carolina and get better. What makes him so special, and what is such a differentiator of him and how he just wins on the field so much?
Well, and Eric, he was not highly recruited. He came to one of our camps, and all these big offensive linemen that we were getting ready to offer scholarships, he whipped every one of them and cost them all scholarships. And I said, "Who is he?" They said, "Oh, Coach, he's too little." And I said, "He's not. He's running by every one of them." And then I went over and met his parents, and he's a National Honor Society student. And I said, "We're offering him. We're just this guy." And then he could have gone to the NFL this year, and he had a lot of opportunities that people that are tampering now tried to get him to leave. And he said, "I'm staying. I want to be here." He number one, he is Omarion Hampton. That just says more. He is tough. He's passionate. He is shorter. He's 6'2", 270. He's strong as could be. So the big, tall offensive linemen have trouble with him because he can dip the shoulder and he can run through them, and he's so strong. And they call him the Butcher because he just beats them up.
That's right.
So I just feel, and I mean high motor every play in practice and every game. There is no quit in him and no slowdown in him. And he's emotional. He's passionate. He was one of the 4 young people that sang the national anthem at the national championship basketball game.
Yeah.
When we were playing a couple of years ago. So he gets it. He got strong faith, but man, he is one of the top leaders on this team, and he is he and Power Eccles are probably the two leaders to start with on defense.
Yeah.
And they say something, that whole defense is going to listen.
Right.
And it was funny, when I hired Geoff Collins, Cayman called him before I could even, it was announced, before I could even have them all talk to him. Cayman called him and welcomed him and said, Coach, we're excited. You let me know what you need. And that's the kind of guy he is.
Yeah. And that's such a luxury, right? For one of your best players to be all of that too. Right. And it's something that, everybody, you can point to that example and say, this is it. This is what a Carolina football player is supposed to be and look like. Let's all get to that. Let's all raise up. And, just looking at the rest of that defensive line, Coach, some guys that have been here, right? And some guys that are really talented. And again, when you have somebody like Cayman that gets so much attention, these other guys should start to feast. When I'm looking at Evans and Ritzy and Shaw, what do you want to continue to see from that unit up front in their development?
Eric, we just got to continue to play better. We've played good at times, but we haven't been consistently good on defense. And that's what hurt us. We've been good enough on offense to win all the games. We've got to get better on special teams, which is a lot defense. And we've got to get better at stopping the run up front, because if you can't stop the run and get to the quarterback, you're not going to win. And that's what we've got to do. And I'm so impressed with Ted Monachino. Here's a guy that coached Ray Lewis. He's coached some of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. He was the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. And he's had 16 years in the NFL. So I'm telling you, when I bring in recruits and look at this staff and say, why wouldn't you want to be coached by a guy that's coached all these great NFL players? He's been to the draft 16 times. He's evaluated. He's taught players to do what you want to do, and those guys are playing at a high level right now. So I'm really excited about them coming from where they were to where we are. Travis Shaw's got tremendous talent. We got to get him playing better all the time. And Ritzy's so talented, and Hester's 325 pounds. And so we've got the guys in there, and we had to transfer Josh Harris from Ole Miss. And they say he's 325. I'd say we've passed that too. Just watching him run here, I think our scales are light. But we,
I need that scale. I need that scale in my life, Coach.
Yeah, and Des Evans and Bo Atkinson, and we got enough players. We just got to do a better job coaching.
Coach, I'm double checking this on your Wikipedia page, by the way. I'm going to take you back.
Dangerous.
Yeah, I'm going to take you back to 1980 Iowa State. You were the OC there is your first OC big coaching job. Did you ever think that you'd have iPads on the sidelines and be able to communicate into the helmet of your quarterback? Like, what do you think of all this new stuff, and how are you guys going to use it?
Kelly, I think it's wonderful. We've been trying to get this done for 20 years.
Yeah.
And if you say the NFL needs it, how can you say college doesn't need it? And we've always needed it. Our problem was with the Power Five, which I guess is Autonomy 4 now. I can't figure out what we've got. And then Group of Five, and then FCS. And we voted together, and we still do that some. We're all voting together for the June signing day. I want us to separate. We're finally separating. So if a school can't afford the helmet communication, they don't have to use it. Mm-hmm. But don't punish the kids that are at the higher levels because they can use it. So we used it in the bowl game, and it is so cool. I got to get the coaches now since it cuts off at 15 seconds, it doesn't in practice. I hear the coach every now and then saying, "Hey, no, get wider, turn up field." I'm saying, "Shut up.
It's over.
It's cut off at 15 seconds. You're not going to be talking to him after the snap of the ball." So we finally in spring got so we shut up with 15 seconds left, because that's what we have to do. But I think it's wonderful. The iPads on the sideline, it's no longer going to be, this is what I think I saw.
Yes.
It's going to be, guy, you took a poor step. This is it. So the old offensive lineman that said, "It wasn't me, Coach." No. It was
we
you.
can't hide. Hey, we can't hide anymore until Monday.
Yeah. And even Kelly, by the time you take it in the locker room at halftime, it's just such a blessing. So I do think in my 50 years of coaching college football, I've seen more changes in the last 2.5 to 3 years than I did the first 47.
Wow.
It's amazing. Now there are some really good things. I do think there's some really good things for the transfer portal. I wish it wasn't ever weak. I wish we'd slow down and make kids stay a little longer. So it's too easy to quit right now. And I don't like that. Even though I do like if you're not playing or you're not getting along with your coach and you can go somewhere else and play, I got that. I'm all in for somebody really trying hard that it's not working for him. I'm good. That's not a problem. I like the fact players are getting paid and therefore parents are getting some benefits. I like that. I like that we're sharing revenue. All that's good. We needed a plan.
Yeah.
We got more consequences now, and we're not going to have a level playing field if we keep doing what we're doing. So we're going to lose who we are as college football. So we got to get back to a plan. But just like these things are going to help the guys so much. And there's so many great things with NIL. We're just talking about Cayman Rucker. He took some of his money. He went back to his middle school and took backpacks.
Wow.
And talked to all of the young ones about young men about how to smell better and better physical health and taking care of yourself, and gave them all backpacks. Tylee Kraft, who's got cancer here, he's been able to help with some of the finances that the bills that have popped up that we couldn't pay for with his cancer. One of our players didn't have insurance and chipped a tooth, and NIL could help that. Tez Walker couldn't afford an attorney. NIL could help that when he was looking at his issues with the NCAA. So when we see these cars these kids are getting and all this stuff that we jump on in the media, there's so many positive things that are happening through NIL for the large majority of the kids that don't make much money, but they make enough to help than just the car at this place or the car at that place or the 8 or the 13 million they hear. That stuff's not realistic for about 99% of the kids.
Yeah, man, gosh, this has been a very refreshing conversation, a very exciting conversation, Coach, about your Tar Heels, and can't wait to see it. So have a great summer. Appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you both, and appreciate what you do to spread the word about college sports. You all are classy. You do it right. You both played. You both get it. And it's one of the things that I felt like I could do when I was with TV is take people behind the scenes. You all been there. You can do that. We appreciate you very much.
Thanks again to Mack Brown, the legend, for joining us here on the show. Maybe his 4th appearance, Mack? 4th, 5th?
At
we
least.
Gotta go count.
It's up there. We need to send him a T-shirt or something. That's what we need to do.
Seriously, to have a Hall of Famer on that many times is a blessing. So we love that, and we love Mack Brown. And I thought, you talked about confidence at the beginning, Mack. I think he is confident. I think he also understands, hey, we got to fix some things. And first and foremost, Drake Maye moving on, such a success story, homegrown kid. You know, Mack Brown is so proud of him and what he's doing, first-round pick. That's my first question is who's the guy at quarterback? And it's kind of a funky situation. They've got options, which, is good. You've got Connor Harrell, who started the Duke's Mayo Bowl, had some flashes in that game. You bring in Max Johnson. So you bring in this guy who's played in the SEC, also bring in his brother at tight end, by the way. And then Mack also slid this in there. They bring back Jacoby Criswell, who played at UNC, transferred to Arkansas, and came back. Mack, do you have any inclination of where this QB room is going to go?
Yeah, one of those guys will be the quarterback.
Okay, good. And that's good here.
Here's the most fascinating thing to me, and this isn't a knock or a negative thing. It just is what it is where we are right now. If Jacoby wouldn't have left, none of this would even be a question. He'd be the guy for however many years he has left, which I think is 1 or 2. So to me, it's just, it's kind of this tiny, thing of this is the entire college football world. Like, just breathe, just be patient, just understand that there's some opportunity. You don't have to go to Arkansas and then come all the way back. But we'll see. He's obviously been in the system, been in us system, with North Carolina, familiar with the fans, familiar with the school, familiar with, a lot of these guys on this team. Does that help? Does he make a huge leap? Does he have the opportunity to make a huge leap? Or is kind of Connor the young buck, and obviously Max with so much experience, especially, in the SEC and some really big games. How much does that matter? It's going to be fascinating to see, and I can't wait to kind of hear what's going on in camp as we get further into this thing. Does anybody kind of take a lead, or do we just ride this thing all the way out at Minnesota for the first game till we find out that first week? And because of that, KG, you're on the road, you're at Minnesota, it's a night game. That kind of makes me lean unless a guy just gives it away. Like if somebody is head and shoulders better, if a guy just can't do it, that makes me feel like Max is going to be the guy to at least start. And who knows, because experience is a big deal. And let's be honest, hand it to 2-8 and get out of the way. That's all you got to do, right? Just don't mess that up. And I think you're in a good spot. So we'll see there. But whoever is playing quarterback, just know you got Superman right behind you, and he's feeling good.
Give the ball to Omarion Hampton. I am so excited to see Omarion Hampton this year. Mack Brown seemed very excited to see him. Got to keep him healthy. That's number one. But you're right, Mac. Whoever's at quarterback is fine. I think you're going to ride Omarion Hampton. And then they have some really interesting, the tight end room is loaded. So find a way to utilize those guys as well as Omarion Hampton. And, we'll see what happens from there. But Mac, I know, what do you expect from Hampton this year? Best running back in the ACC? Is that just kind of where we are at this point?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the baseline, right? Just because what he did last year. And you're talking about Doak Campbell. That's what we're trying to do is win awards here and be, the best ever, kind of at your position, at your school. And there's a lot of guys that have been there, done that. But it's going to be difficult, right? He had such a statistical explosion of a year last year. 1,500 yards. That is a ton. I think he had 298 rushes or something of that nature.
And
15 touchdowns.
With how much they passed it. They also threw the ball a lot. That's what worries me about Omarion is you don't have the threat of Drake Maye. We're joking saying, just hand the ball off to him. But you've got to have some sort of threat in the passing game. That's really got to be number one goal for UNC. Give me some sort of threat so that Omarion Hampton has more room to work.
Right. And I kind of, the way I'm picturing is that I'm thinking of, ACC friend here, Stanford, 2015, 14, 16 area, where they had a monster running back in Christian McCaffrey. And then they had 3 or 4 tight ends that they loved. And not saying that there's not talent at wide receiver. There certainly is. And maybe much more talent than Stanford had at UNC. But that, I think, if you can have the picture perfect offense for this year, I want 2 or 3 tight ends on the field every play. And I want to be able to run the ball at will. And hopefully someone else emerges as a bit of a spell back or another threat. Or maybe, one of these quarterbacks can really hurt you with his legs as well. But I think you're right. It cannot just be, hey, we're going to line up and run it 50 times a game. I don't necessarily think they're quite built for that yet up front and other things that they want to do. But, hey, when you got a guy like that, maybe you can.
Maybe you can. Well, we'll see. And then I think the other big question, and then we're going to get to UNC's schedule, is, of course, the defense, and it felt like Gene Chizik it felt like he had been out of the game for too long, and it didn't work. Now you bring in Geoff Collins, the minister of mayhem, which ironically is actually what we've been calling my son lately. He's crazy. But I know you are a big Geoff Collins fan. You've had some really good talks with him when he was head coach at Georgia Tech, and Mack Brown seems excited about him. Where can he get this defense, Mac? I feel like we say this with UNC every year. You don't got to be the best in the league, but you can't be 9th or 10th. You got to be 4th, 5th, 6th, somewhere in there. That's where I think they need to be.
Yeah, I think upper middle is the goal, right? And just when you have the amount of talent, it should be more than that, right? You look at all these 5 stars everywhere, 4 stars, highly talented guys, specifically on that defensive line, that it's just time. I've been saying it for 4 years. Take the step, because there's still a lot of them are still there. And, I know that they have the ability, seen it in flashes. I think certainly it helps by having the butcher, Cayman Rucker there, a guy who is one of the best in the country at the edge position, a hybrid linebacker guy that undersized, that has that chip on his shoulder and just goes and hunts and is a monster. You got Power Eccles, who has been kind of biding his time to be the guy. Now he is. So it kind of starts with those 2, and everybody else. Can you just step it up 1% each day? And I think Coach Collins can get that out of him. I think he has probably learned so much just sitting back. Kind of was in an advisory role for a couple of different people, did some other things, while he was taking a year off, if you will. And just the things that, quite frankly, you learn, being a head coach. And now that he's back, and he just has to worry about his defense, and he just has to worry about his guys. He's one of the best when that's what he's doing. And so I hope that translates. I hope that those guys are able to take a step forward, because that's been the Achilles heel for so many years now of preventing North Carolina from shattering through that ceiling that's kind of just been there right there for him.
And Mack Brown did say we want to play more guys, which was a big thing for him.
Yeah.
And, that makes sense because last year they did start pretty well defensively. The South Carolina game, we thought, this defense is fixed. Like, we're good.
So excited.
And of course, that wasn't the case. Injuries pile up. So just being able to play more guys. And, that does create a little more mayhem, if you will, going with Geoff Collins, being able to put some fresh guys in there. So, and of course, Geoff Collins being able to use the player to coach communication as well. I think that's going to be interesting as a guy who was used to kind of being in charge as a head coach. I'm hopeful, Mac. I'm not saying, hey, Jeff's just going to fix it, but I am hopeful. I'm hopeful.
I'm right there with you. And I'm not, it's funny, when we first kind of started thinking about this year, and, Miami's always Miami. Everyone's always so excited. And I kind of was like, I'm going to pull the reins back and you're going to have to show me. And then I get super excited about Miami. I'm right. I'm a little further than that with North Carolina's defense, because I think there are so many guys that they can make something happen. So I'm not necessarily out saying I don't believe until you do it. Sure. I'm a little further along than that, but I can quickly jump off. Like we've got these first 5 games, we've got to go, and we have to play really, really well defensively.
Well, and you mentioned that. Let's get to their schedule. As we said, the win total 7.5. They open at Minnesota. That's an interesting spot on a Thursday night. Going to be maybe the only game on that night on Fox, 8 p.m. on the road. I remember a couple years ago, Ohio State opened at Minnesota. It was a pretty good environment. I think they still won, but still good environment. So you open on the road. Then you have 3 straight home games: Charlotte, North Carolina Central, JMU. JMU is absolutely, that's no pushover. That could be a really good game. Then you go at Duke. You have Florida State on the schedule, but you do not have Clemson. You have NC State. You do not have Miami. We've talked about the schedule. We did it earlier in the kind of spring. I think the schedule is extremely manageable.
Yeah.
But if you somehow start 2-2 with Minnesota and JMU, then that's a big problem. But I think it is manageable, Mac. And when I see 7.5, I tend to lean to 7. I think the safe spot for me is 7 wins, and that's why it's at 7.5. Because to win 8, they're going to have to beat somebody pretty good.
Right.
So I think I'm leaning towards the under with this total.
And not lose to someone you're not supposed
exactly,
to.
Like
a la
Virginia,
a la a Georgia Tech. Teams that you were favored highly against, and you just can't get it done. I think there's no question you have to start fast. I mean, at Minnesota, they're going to want to run the football. It's going to be a gritty environment, a defensive team, whatever, that kind of thing. And how fast can we get started? Yeah, Big 10, big slow 10. How much can you make it happen? How much can you make it happen? Because then against Charlotte, against, NC Central, against James Madison, they lost their coach. A lot of guys jumping in the portal.
True.
Although that's a historically, recent history, very good team, we should be 4-0 in a hurry. And quite frankly, with Duke and the toss-up that they're doing, maybe you win there at Duke, and then, of course, against Pittsburgh, we just don't have enough information. Maybe
that's the point, though, Mac, is this schedule is pretty manageable.
It's pretty manageable. The only game that, honestly, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is going to be tough, isn't until October 12th when you're playing Georgia Tech, who I think Georgia Tech's going to be really good. I think Georgia,
and also it's really good. UNC's Achilles heel, it seems.
It is always. And guess what? You got Georgia Tech and at Virginia back to back, and of course at Florida State, which I don't think Mack Brown has ever beat Florida State or never won at Florida State, one of the two. And so that 3-game stretch right there, KG, to me, that's where we make or break our season. Do we have a winning record in those games? Are we 0-for in those games? Are we undefeated? And who knows what the heck's going to happen in those games. But I think that October 12th through November 2nd, that's where UNC fans circle 100 times and say, how do we do right here?
Correct. And you do have a bye week in there as well between your two nightmares of Georgia Tech and Virginia. And we say that tongue in cheek, right? Because UNC should beat Georgia Tech and Virginia, but it's just they haven't in recent years, and it's been kind of an issue, and it's been the games that have derailed their seasons. But
that's right.
I'm really interested. I think this team has a lot of potential, Mac. A lot of potential, and maybe it will help UNC, kind of like 2 years ago when the country didn't really know about Drake Maye, to help them have a little less hype going into this year, fly under the radar a little bit more and see what they can do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, again, it's good to have potential, right? It's not, sitting here saying, I don't know. We mentioned best of the best 3 or 4 times when we talk about this team and how
Mac,
excited
there are some other teams where we won't say, you have one of the best players in the league. So
Sadly, we won't. But we won't talk about that right now. So anyway, I don't think I gave a number. I think I'm going under 2. I think 7 is the right number. Will be interesting to see how that adjusts right before kickoff and if that's the number that it kind of stays at. But the P word, potential, is a big word for this season. And I think, what can you do with it? And everything you just said about, okay, let's take this next step with none of the pressure. It's a good situation to be in, for sure.
Agreed. All right, Mac. Number 1 is done. And guess what? We're back with another episode tomorrow. So stay tuned.
16 more. Here we go. Big shout out to Jeremy Sharp. Can't thank you enough, brother, for setting this up. Mack Brown, always, Coach Brown, grateful for his time. And USC fans, tap in. Let's hear about it. Jump in the comments. Tell us what you think. And while you're there, go ahead and subscribe. We need your continuous help over on YouTube. The OGs over on Apple Podcasts as well. Rate, review, subscribe there. We would greatly appreciate that. Episode 1 is done. Until next time, which is tomorrow, we'll see y'all.